Welcome to another show. I am your host, David Lewis. This is Live with David Lewis. We've got a good topic today. As always, thanks. A little shout out to Dino for helping with all my notes, putting everything together. Today, we're going to talk about the goal of the qualification step. The qualification step in the sales process is extremely important. We've done our meet and greet. We've talked in the past about how our goal is to, the number one goal is to find a car that the customer loves. Goal number two is get them to like you as a salesperson. Number three, want to do business at your dealership. And number four, to give them a fair and reasonable price. And you should have a sale with some decent gross. So you've done your meet and greet. Now it's time to do the qualification step. And we've talked about this before where buyers lie to us. So let me take a few seconds and let's go over those 4 rules of sales, our DLA 4 rules of sales that apply very strongly with the qualification step. And rule number 1 is to never ask a question that could result in a lie. We do not want our customer to lie to us during the qualification step, because if they do, it's going to send us in a bad direction. When we ask the question of, what budget, what payment range do you have in mind? What's your budget? We all know people lie and lowball us, and we end up showing them the wrong car. Never ask a question that could get an answer you don't want to hear. That goes back to the same question of what is your budget? I tell you a lowball budget. That's really not what I wanted to hear. Or if I asked, is anybody else involved in the purchasing with you? And they say, well, yes, my significant other, and that person's not here. It's an answer you don't want to hear. Rule number 3, never ask a question or make a statement that can make the customer more defensive. Your job is to release those defensive postures, to get that customer to relax, to want to be with you. The more relaxed they are, the less their defensive posture, the more likely are you going to make a great presentation and demonstration and sell the car. And then rule number 4 is always try to catch the customer off guard. How do we do that? We do that by being unique, different, and inspiring. We do what everybody else doesn't do and not what the customer expects us to do. So you remember, the customer expects us to be, aggressive, overzealous, to try to sell them a car right there on the spot. Now, do we want to sell them a car today? Of course we do. Let's not get off our final goal. But we have other goals to get to that final goal, and that has to do with releasing their defensive posture. Some of you in your qualification steps like to get the customer inside, ask a bunch of questions. It's a term called a needs analysis. I'm not a big fan of it. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I think everything works if it's done properly. But I think that when a customer comes to the dealership, all we're doing by bringing them into the dealership and sitting them down and asking them a bunch of questions is making them more defensive. Now, again, you're going to get me to lie to you. I'm going to give you answers you don't want to hear, and I'm going to become more defensive. The goal is to speed up the process. Now we can go and pick the car that they tell us they want based on these questions we ask and pull it up front. Well, that defeats the purpose of an inventory walk. That defeats the purpose of having all this inventory out there. You want the customer out there walking your inventory. That's where they see things that catch their eye, that gets their attention, that makes them want to draw towards that car. So the 4 rules that I just shared with you, what are the effects? Well, the effects are that they keep you focused and disciplined. If you stay with those 4 rules, you're going to stay focused. You're going to stay disciplined. Keeps you organized, which is really important. It prevents you from asking those bad questions you don't want to do. Prevents you from digging yourself into a hole. And a lot of times we do that. We don't mean to do it, but we do it. We dig ourselves into a hole, and then we can't get out of that hole. We get in too far. It allows us to stay logical in our sales process. It won't raise the customer's defenses or fears, and it prevents us from losing control. Structure is important to everybody, whether you think so or not. Everybody has some form of structure in their life, whether it's from their morning routine to before they go to bed routine, whether it's a meal routine, the way they drive to work or to an event. We have structure, we have a routine. Now, let's talk about this. Are customers going to lie to us? Absolutely. They will try to lie to us without us even asking questions. So we have to be aware of that. Remember, a lie sends you down the wrong path. I leave my house with a $500 budget in mind. You ask me what my budget is, I'm going to tell you $350, $400. You're going to show me cars for $350, $400. I don't want a car that's $350, $400. At the end, I'm just going to say, I want to go home and think about it. I'm not going to say to you, I changed my mind. I don't want to be at $400. Show me the cars at $500. I am too defensive at this point. You haven't caught my interest. I'm just going to move on. Another reason people might lie is because they want to get a better deal. I mean, that's logical. I would lie to you to get a better deal. I think most people would too. So in our qualification step, we have to ask ourselves, what's the goal of having them lie to us? What is the goal of getting this information? We've talked about this before. Should the customer be fearful of you? And the answer is yes. They should be petrified of you. Why? Because you are a professional salesperson. Your job is to sell them a car today and for a lot of money. So don't kid yourself that they're not afraid of you. They are. I don't care how nice you are, how good you are. They are still afraid. Now, the more they like you, the less they fear you. There's always going to be some sort of fear in there. So we can get into that in another situation. Keep in mind what your goal is of the qualification step. And it's only one thing. The goal of your qualification step is to get a direction that you want to go on the lot. That's all you want to do. You don't need to know if they have a trade. Not important. You don't need to know what their timeline is. Not important. Who's involved in the buying decision? Not important. What their budget is, what they owe on that trade, not important. All you're trying to figure out is what direction do I want to head to on this lot with all these cars. Now, we talked about the typical qualifying questions that most salespeople ask, which is those budget questions and all the timeline questions. And as I said to you in a minute, they violate those 4 rules. They make the customer more defensive. Customers hate these questions. They come across as an interrogation, and they would rather be out there looking at cars. Again, when you ask the wrong questions, you head in the wrong direction. Okay, so we talked about the customer says one payment, but it's not their real payment. You then take them to the wrong car. Other qualifying issues that come into play is when you take the customer directly to your desk, and we talked about that in a second. So let's get to the big part of this. What is your goal in the qualification step? Your goal of the qualification step is to head in a specific direction. So when I meet and greet a customer, I only really need to ask 2, maybe 3 questions. And none of these questions are threatening, and none of them are going to make them lie to me. My first question is going to be well, first, of course, obviously, I'm going to do my meet and greet. And, hi, welcome to the dealership. My name is David Lewis, and you are Mr. and Mrs. Welcome to the dealership. We're glad to have you here. Have you been here before? No, we haven't. Well, fantastic. Welcome to the dealership. We're glad to have you here today. Then I'm going to ask as my qualifying question. So, folks, are you looking today for a new or used car? It's a very simple question. Nobody is going to be threatened by that question. Nobody's going to lie to you. No one's going to say, well, how do I answer that question? If I want a new, should I tell them a used? They're not going to do that. So if they say, well, we're looking for a new car, fantastic. Now, question number 2, and that is if you have multiple franchises in your dealership. Great. Are you looking for a Chevy, a Buick, or a Cadillac? Are you looking for a Toyota, Honda, or Ford? Whatever your franchises are, let's try to narrow this down a little bit. Now, some people say, well, we're really not sure. We're open to that. Okay, great. And I always say, love having options. Options are fantastic. So my first question is new or used. My second question is going to be based on brand. My third question is then going to be, so were you thinking more of a coupe, a sedan, a minivan, utility vehicle, or truck? See, I need to know where to go on this lot now. So if they say, well, we're looking for a new Chevrolet sedan, fantastic. I know where to go on the lot. I know where to start walking. Now, if they say to me, well, we're looking for a new car, we're not sure which brand yet. So, you're looking for a Toyota, Honda, or a Nissan. Well, we're not sure. Okay, have you narrowed it down to a coupe, sedan, minivan, utility vehicle, truck? Well, we're not sure. We're thinking with something with 4 doors. Okay, fantastic. Now, this customer has a wider range of vehicles they want to look at. And it's important that you show them all these different vehicles. Don't spend a lot of time. Just walk them through, walk them around. Say, great, let's start with the 4-door sedans, and then we'll jump over to 4-door utility vehicles and our 4-door trucks. They might say, no, we don't want a truck. Okay, great. So it's a sedan or utility vehicle. Well, let's look at the 3 brands. We'll size them up, and you tell me which one you'd like to go to the next step with. The idea, again, here is to not make the customer defensive, is to let the customer think. They're thinking they're in control, but they're really not in control. Remember, you're not trying to control the customer. You're trying to control the process and the dialogue. That's what you're trying to control, process and dialogue, not the customer. Because if you're trying to control the customer, you're going to back yourself into a corner, and that customer is going to get more defensive. We're trying to control the process and the dialogue. Let the customer then qualify themselves. This is what this is doing. Remember, I haven't asked them about their budget. It's not important to me. It's not important to me. Now, I know a lot of you are asking yourselves, well, if I don't know their budget, which car do I show them? Well, and that's a great question. And that's going into the second step. So let's talk about that for just a few seconds here so that we understand this. I always start the customer on the cheapest car possible in the qualified area they want to go. So let's make this easy for myself. They're looking for a new car, they're looking for a Honda, and they're looking for a sedan. So I would take them to the most inexpensive Honda sedan. And I would say, folks, this is the base model Honda four-door sedan. And then I would shut my mouth and let them tell me what they think. If it's too small for them, they're going to say, no, that's too small for us. Okay, great. Let's go to the next size up, or the next size up, or the next, whatever you have. Once they get to that area they like, they're going to go look closer at the car, and they're going to look at the window stickers. We know that. That's a given fact. They will send you a sign whether they can afford this car or not. Now, again, they're qualifying themselves without you asking any questions. Their defensive postures are not going up, they're going down. And now remember, your number one goal is to find the car they love. They're going to find the car they love. Always remember that NADA for years always reported that 75% of the people bought a car different than they came in expecting to buy. Now, that could mean they changed something as simple as the color, or it could have been an accessory, or it could have been a model. I don't know what it is, but this way they're picking the car they love. Remember, if you had asked them what their budget was, you might have stopped at the mid-size car. You might have stopped at the small car because you knew they could not afford the next size up. So now what are you going to do? You're going to try to shoehorn them into that car that they don't like because they lied to you about their budget. And that's a bad thing. Now, let's go back to the qualification step. A lot of you, and you have to listen to your managers. Whatever your managers tell you they want you to do is what you've got to follow. A lot of times we want to know, do they have a trade right up front? And I see no logical value in that. I mean, zero. You're putting me on the spot by asking me right up front, do I have a trade? Because then you're going to ask me, well, how much do I owe on it? Now, let's just say that you know that I'm buried $4,000 in my trade. So where's your posture and attitude right now? Is it that of excitement or frustration? But here's the funny thing about it. We put people in cars every day that are upside down on their trades. But first they have to fall in love with a car. And the problem is now it's not the customer that becomes defensive, it's the salesperson that becomes defensive. Because now you don't think that you're going to be able to fit them in that vehicle or a vehicle because you have gotten confused over the trade value. And now it's psychological warfare that's going on up here in su cabeza. And now you end up showing cars they don't want and they're not going to buy. I don't see the value in that. I don't care how my customers are paying for their car. I don't care if they're paying cash, they're financing, or they're leasing. It has nothing to do with finding the car that they love. And that is very, very important. Okay. I want the customer to qualify themselves. Okay. Peek here at my notes some more. I told you I want to start them at the cheapest car, let them qualify themselves. Also keep something in mind. Sometimes customers don't understand how payments work. They're skewed by that thought process, and that can work in your favor. Okay. It can also work against you. People come into the dealerships with misleading thoughts. Okay. In my general area, you would think that you could buy a $35,000 car for $199 a month. Now, does it drive people into the dealership? Sure, it does. Until they figure out that they need to put down $7,000 and have another $5,000 worth of trade value, and it's for 84 months. So some people don't understand, and that's why I stay away from the payment process. Okay. The effects of a proper qualification step is that no lies, no defensive posture. It doesn't violate our 4 rules of sales. And it starts the process of mental ownership of a vehicle and of you as their salesperson. And that's really, really, really important. So with that said, today was going to be a short show because it is just one step in the sales process. I'm going to start to open up to some questions because I'm already getting a ton of questions that are popping in here. So let me just move my questions over here to my sidebar and let's see what some of these questions that are coming in. Okay, because this will get us going in another direction. So this is coming from the conference from at A. Okay. Would not asking the customer what payment they're wanting be a good idea? If you don't ask this question, they land on a car that is $300 more per month than they're wanting, then I just waste a lot of time. Okay. So the question is this, and it makes logical sense. What happens now by not asking what their budget is, and I put them in a car that they cannot afford? Now, first, let's get one fact straight. Could that happen? Absolutely. Let's not deny that that could happen. You have to ask yourself this question. Am I better off getting a car they love finding a car they love that's a few dollars more than they want to spend, or getting them to lie to me and not show them the car they fall in love with. You have to make that decision. I know my answer. My answer is I can easily sell somebody on a car they love that's a few dollars more. Now, in this question, they asked if it was $300 more per month. I don't think that's going to happen. Okay. Someone that has a $400 budget with, $500 down is not going to let you put them in a $50, $60, $70,000 vehicle. Most people have that kind of mathematical common sense to know that's not going to work. Now, again, could it happen? Absolutely. Anything could happen. And could I spin my wheels? Absolutely. It's the risk you take. Me personally, I'd rather sell somebody a car they love and work harder to get them to pay more than find something they don't like and try to shoehorn them into a car. All right. Tatum wants to know, we've been taught to ask the client what type of car they're looking for and then bring the car up front for them to look at versus walking around the lot. Why is this not a good idea? Well, Tatum, again, if your managers want you to do this, I understand that's the right thing to do. But why would you want to narrow their choice down to one car? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And I'll give you a great scenario. We've got a lot of people on the show today, so I've got to have some women out there. Women, consider this. If you went to the store, you're going to go look for shoes, and you walked into the shoe store, and the sales clerk stopped you. Right? Stop. Sit down. I'm going to ask you some questions before you walk around. So I need to know, are you looking for a flat or a heel? A heel. Okay, a 2-inch, a 4-inch, a 6-inch. Probably a 4-inch. Okay, an open toe or a closed toe? Open toe. Okay, what color are you thinking? The white. Okay, sit right there. And they come and bring you that white shoe. Are you going to be happy with that? No, of course not. You want to go look at all the different shoes because you might have come in thinking you wanted a 4-inch open toe white shoe, and you might walk out with a 2-inch closed toe beige shoe. Don't narrow this down to one choice for the customer, because then if you spend an hour and a half on that one choice and they don't like it, and now they want to look at other choices, you're going to get frustrated. I would too. It's a logical thing. I've just spent an hour and a half selling something, and now I find out that maybe there was something else they wanted. That's why I think it's so important to walk the lot. John wants to know, what are your thoughts on customer questionnaires? This is part of our qualifying process. Okay, so John, that goes back to our needs analysis. And I'm not saying that they're wrong. I'm just not a fan of a needs analysis. I don't understand what you're trying to accomplish. If you're trying to get me more defensive and have me lie to you, mission accomplished. Because when you sit me down and you ask me those 11 questions, 10 questions, 13 questions, whatever it is, I'm going to keep asking myself, why do you need to know all this information? And you ask a lot of questions. And then what do you do with the customer that does not want to come into the building? Do you force them into the building? You try hard, I can tell you that. And then if you can't and they're not going to come in, now you got them really mad, upset, and frustrated, and they want to leave. I just don't see the benefit. But if your managers want you to do this, you got to do it. Now let's take a few more questions here. Team Toyota, is it wrong to start at the most expensive model first and work our way down? Yes, yes, I think that's a mistake. Okay. Don't show me the best cut of meat and I realize I can't afford it, and then bring me down to a strip steak. I'm not going to feel good about my strip steak. Okay. If you start me at the strip steak and work me up, I'm going to pick the one that I'm most comfortable with, and I'll stop you where I want to stop you at. I think you need to start them at the most expensive. Let's rule out things, because if you go to the most expensive and they like it, they're going to start looking at it. And then you might be stuck on that car. And that's where you could be at that $300 gap. I mean, you never be at a $300 gap, but you could be at a $100 difference per month in payment. And now you've oversold. So I think you got to start at the bottom. Okay, here's a big one. Masterson, I'm confused why you believe bringing up the trade during the qualifying is a bad idea. Wouldn't this save a lot of time by getting that out of the way? Also, what if the client needs to know how much equity they have in their car before? Okay, I understand what you're saying. I'm not going to mention any names, but there's a trainer out there who's very big on coming in and buy a car in 90 minutes or less, soup to nuts, start to finish. Understand, people don't have a problem with the timeline of buying a car. I can tell you this about all the surveys we do. And everybody says, no, the customer wants a faster process. It takes too long. No, that's not what they're saying. You haven't asked the right questions and you're not getting the right data. What the customer is saying is, once I decide what I want to buy, that process afterwards takes too long. I was there for 2 hours, bought a car, and then I was there for another 2.5 hours waiting to get through your F&I process, your aftermarket process, your delivery process. That's what they don't like. Nobody Nobody wants to come in and buy a car in 30 minutes or less. So I know the philosophy is if we start to trade up right away, get that process going, it speeds up the sales process. It doesn't. I mean, I shouldn't say that. It probably does. But do you really want to speed up the most important part of the process? And what if it's bad information? Now, the second part of this, and I see this happen all the time. If you did that with me, if we came in and you started out with my trade, and I said, yes, I got a trade, let's get it appraised while we're looking at cars. The minute we got out of that demo ride, I can tell you exactly what question I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you, so how much is my trade worth? How much is my trade worth? How much? And you say, come on in, let's sit down. We'll get it. Okay, I'll follow you in. I'll give you okay, how much is my trade worth? And then you're not going to want to give me that answer right away. So I don't understand why you got that up front. I personally, and again, you don't have to agree with me, I think that you're putting the cart before the horse. Listen, go back to the fundamentals. Get the customer to fall in love with a car. You do that, you are 90% there. Get them to like you. Should be easy if you're doing the right job. Get them to want to do business at your dealership. And then once you do that, you give them the right price. And should you make more gross than anybody else? Absolutely. Absolutely. If somebody says to me, well, I can beat that price by $200, I guarantee you I will still earn that deal, and I will not give up my $200. I might give up $50. And the telltale sign is when somebody leaves my dealership and calls me back and says, hey, the dealership down the street will beat your price by $100. They're telling me something. They're telling me they want to buy from me, but they just want to negotiate. Doesn't mean I'm going to give in on the $100. That's a decision you have to make. So we're going to wrap up for today. Thank you very much for joining me. The next show in a couple of weeks is, tell me, I got a mental block on what the next show was. It's, why should I buy from you? That's going to be, I got some great thoughts. And that's a good question. Why should I buy a car from you? I mean, if you're like everybody else, I can just buy from anybody else. So with that said, thank you so much for joining me today. Beginning of May, we got 1 week in. Let's go out there, hit it hard, have a great month, and everyone please be safe. Talk to y'all soon. Take care. Bye-bye.